Snaring the unwary in his web of logic. This is the boss of talk, Charles Adler.
One of those stories where I say, well, you know, it might be taking place in Toronto. I know Toronto thinks of itself as center of the universe. I like to get past the cliches to make the point that, yeah, it may be happening there. The story may be developing there, but it's a story of urban Canada. And what's happening there is happening in many other parts of the country. And this is more and more people deciding to live right in the heart of the city, downtown. The burbs not growing as fast as downtowns in many parts of the country. Toronto, one of them, the headline, downtown Toronto's pace of population growth triples, outpacing the suburbs. Echo boomers are flocking toward the urban center. Any moment now we'll be joined by a man I call the condo king. Many others think of him the same way. Brad Lamb, his name. He's one of the top condominium developers in the country, goes around the world, understands trends. And so we need to talk to him about some of these trends because they're important. The report by TD Economics cites a dramatic surge of young professionals into the core over the last 5 years. Pace of population growth tripling since the previous 3 census periods, and for the first time in decades, outpacing the suburbs. So the days of endless suburban growth with a hollowing out of the urban area, those days may be over, and there may be several reasons for that. Now, the author of the report, who's also a person who's traveled around the world, says, I feel like we've hit critical mass and now we're sort of on our way to becoming a city like a New York or a London. Not there yet, but going in that direction. Report finds that echo boomers, these are the children of post-war baby boomers. So if you're a baby boomer, you know you're a boomer. Nobody has to tell you, right? Your kid is called an echo boomer. The echo boomers have increasingly decided to discard the suburbs, say goodbye to the burbs, because they want proximity to transit. They want to be close to transit. They want to be close to their workplaces. They want to be close to all kinds of amenities. That could be theater. That could be clubs. That could be all sorts of stuff. But they just don't want it to be a long drive in. So recognizing the opportunity, more and more employers have started setting up shop in the downtown core, reversing a decades-long trend of businesses opting to locate in outlying municipalities to avoid the high costs of downtown real estate. So since 2009, just in the last 4 years, nearly 5 million square feet of office space built in Toronto, compared with under 4 in the suburbs. Downtown growing fast in the burbs. Once again, it's not just a Toronto story. If we look at the previous few decades, so much of the development of the city was driven by baby boomers and what they wanted and what they demanded, and we know those of us who are boomers, and I plead guilty, I'm a boomer. I didn't choose to be born after the war, but I was. I was born about 10 years after the war ended. And as a boomer over the years, yeah, I, like many other boomers, have gravitated to the burbs. I wanted a driveway. I wanted some land. I wanted to be close to a mall. And that's how uncultured and sick and disgusting boomers are. Brad Lamb wants nothing to do with them. Brad, aren't you a boomer?
I guess I am, yeah.
All right. Have I described, I mean, in very kind of vague, sketchy terms, what boomers have been about for a number of years, but obviously their kids are not that way. Is that basically what boomers have wanted, the burbs with the bigger house and the driveway close to the mall, that type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody wants, in the end, most people want a house, whether it's going to be in the suburbs or in the city. I think the suburbs have been the affordable option for people, so that's why they've gone out there.
But something has changed dramatically. Now, I just, without, I don't want to do a bashing of the burbs. There's no upside to that. But I need to ask you this. If kids are growing up in the suburbs, there's no dream there. There's nothing exotic about it. That's what they take for granted. Maybe downtown is a little more interesting.
Well, yeah, I think the suburbs, I mean, I actually grew up in the suburbs of Montreal, and it was magical. You know, it was a phenomenal place to grow up. But, of course, as soon as I got old enough, I left to the city because that's where, young people want to be. It's where exciting ideas are happening and where life is. And, by the way, other single people are, which is what human beings want. They want to meet single people, right?
Yeah.
So I think the key here is that there's more single people now than there's ever been. and people are staying single longer, and people are waiting for a longer time to have children, and the divorce rate's at an all-time high, and probably going to continue with that. So this is creating a larger number of people that want to be single, and where's the best place to be single? Well, it's the big city.
But even if we're not single, let's say we're childless or empty nesters or what have you, because let's face it, it's not like we want to bring up a bunch of kids downtown. We understand that. Last time I lived in Toronto, I was in the burbs. Technically speaking, I was only 45 minutes away, but hey, who's kidding who? With traffic what it is, I was at times hours away. So if I went, home after the office, the idea of coming back into Toronto, whether it's for theater, whether it's for a party, whether it's for a restaurant, I mean, you got to be kidding. There's no way I'm going to be doing that. And we're living in an age where convenience matters. It's inconvenient for many of us to live in the burbs.
Absolutely. The only people that will live in the burbs today are people that really have to. And those are, the middle class, lower middle class type individuals that have children. And it's not suitable for them to live in a small apartment in the city, and they don't have the money to buy a larger place in the city. But I think that most people that can avoid living in the suburbs. Now, this is a big, it's a big swath I'm cutting here, but I think most people would prefer to live in the city if they could. There are elements of people that love the suburbs. My brother does, but most people I think would rather live where there's more, more activities.
You're laughing. Is your brother some sort of alien?
Basically, he lives an hour outside of the city and swears by it, and both my brothers do. And I just shake my head. I don't understand their lifestyle, but they don't understand mine.
Well, some people like going fishing, and they've got guns, and they need land.
Well, they don't have guns, and they don't go fishing. They just like living in the suburban cul-de-sacs.
I'm just having fun with you. I'm this close to calling your brothers a bunch of hillbillies, and what the hey do I know about them? But I'm just having some fun with you, Brad. Look, I mentioned earlier to the audience just before you joined us that, this story about this trend, it technically takes place in Toronto, but it's not restricted to Toronto. Give me a sense of what it's like in the rest of the country, downtown versus the burbs.
All right. Well, we're very active in Ottawa. It's happening in Ottawa in the same way as it's happening in Toronto. We've been active in Montreal, and it's happening there too. Toronto obviously is the center of this in North America for a lot of reasons, but it's also happening in Calgary, and it's picking up steam. People want to live in the city. They're leaving houses for the city. And of course it's been happening in Vancouver for a very long time. People would prefer to live in the city as well. Now, there are people that there's always people that are going to want to live outside of the city, but I have to say it really is a trend that's picked up over the last 10 years because of the increasing divorce rate, the rate of people staying single older for older ages, and also because people are not having children. Listen, I'm 50 and I just had a kid. So, this is what people are doing these days. They're putting all that stuff off, and that means they're going to stay in an apartment or in a city-type house longer. People will still go to the suburbs, but they're going to wait longer. And some will never go because they'll never get married or never be married long enough to have children.
Now, what were the downsides of living in the city that are no longer there? I mean, one of the things people think about naturally is security and safety. Do you have the impression that in most of these cities that's been taken care of?
Yeah, I mean, in the cities that I mentioned, you can walk around most hours of the day and night in most areas and really not encounter any violent crime. Violent crime occurs, but rarely. And I've lived in the city of Toronto all my adult life, and I've never once had a problem with any of that. I can't think of any disadvantage to living in the city. There's so many, it's easy to get out of the city if you want to. There's lots of great restaurants and bars and shows and theater and anything else that excites you, and so I couldn't conceive of why, if you could live in the city, you wouldn't.
Well, it's a parking thing. If you drive a big honking SUV or a big pickup truck or a semi-trailer or something, it's easier to park in the suburbs.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, I've lived downtown for 25, 30 years, and I never take my car when I go out in the evening, ever. I just take a taxi, and And if you work downtown, live downtown, there's no need to take your car unless you use your car for work.
Brad, let's talk about money for a second, because for many people that's their major investment, their home, their house, their condo, what have you. Based on the trends as you see them, is having property, whether it's called a condo or anything, but in this case, you're the condo king, we're talking condos, is it a better investment? I mean, is it going to grow, say, over a 10, 15-year time horizon more than the average home in the burbs?
I think that a condominium will grow more than houses in the burbs. It depends on where you sort of draw the line as the burbs. If you're an hour commute outside of Toronto, I think that's going to be challenging to see the same kind of increases in values you'd have in the city for a condominium, just because the absolute scarcity of land downtown, and it's becoming acute in Toronto. The best thing you can do, if the most money you're going to make in real estate, is if you can afford to buy a house in the city. They're not making any more of them, and the city will grow by 1 million people every 15 or so years. So, X number of those 1 million people are going to want to live in a house, and it won't be enough for them. We can add more condos in the core. We can't add more houses. So the best thing you can do if you can afford to buy a house downtown. If you can't afford to buy a house downtown, the second best thing is a condo downtown, in my opinion.
Okay, no condo king, no condo prince, no condo wannabe, no condo jester likes this question. But I got to ask the question because I'm paid to ask the questions. Here's the question. What about those condo fees? I know they sound reasonable, look reasonable in some places, and they'll tell you that they're really doing a lot for the condo fee. But in some places, the condo fee can choke a horse, Brad.
Well, condo fees are basically, it's a nonprofit organization that just covers the cost of managing a building. So it shouldn't cost any more than a well-maintained apartment building, right? It essentially is an apartment building. So if you're keeping the windows clean and keeping the building safe and keeping the mechanical systems working well, like any apartment owner should do, meaning a big apartment building, the difference is they don't. Apartment buildings are not as well maintained as condo buildings. The lifestyles are not as good, and if they were taking the right amount of money out of their profits or cash flow and maintaining their buildings, then condo fees would be no different than whatever a portion of rent was attributed to maintaining an apartment building. So it's a nonprofit thing. It's really, you can still buy an apartment in Toronto for the prices we have today, rent it out, and make a positive cash flow. And that part of that cost is your condo fee. And the beautiful thing about that is that you don't have to do anything. There's a management company that will clean the windows, vacuum the hallways, remove the snow, and keep the heat on and all the mechanical systems working. So it's a rare situation when condominium fees would choke a horse, but you have to be careful. Don't buy in a building with few units. It's better to buy in a building with more units.
Will they feed the pet chinchilla?
You probably could get someone to do that for you. I think someone would do that for you if you're on holiday.
By the way, you're the first person to react to this because this is breaking news in Toronto and the rest of Canada, but particularly important in Toronto. It looks like there will be a decision made, Condo King Brad Lamb, on your mayor, Rob Ford, Friday morning at 10:30 Toronto time. Will that affect the condo business one way or the other? Does it matter to you?
No, in Toronto, the people that really have the sway in our business are the local councillors. I mean, the mayor is important, obviously, but I think for our business particularly, because they really decide on what takes place in their ward, or they approve what takes place in their ward along with the planning council or planning people. They're really the ones that matter. The mayor sets policy and so on, and certainly it's not good for Toronto to have this instability, but less important, I think, for the overall condo market than the local councillors.
Okay, last question, focusing on condos for the last couple of years. All sorts of stories, as you know, saying that it's peaked, the values are going to come down. Wait for 3 months, 6 months, you'll get a much better deal. It never seems to happen. Is there any reason to ever believe those Chicken Little skies falling on the condo business stories? Yeah,
absolutely. There's been 3 times in the last 31 years where condo prices have fallen at each recession. And, currently what we're in is a recovery from the last recession. We did have real estate prices drop in 2008, 2009, and they've sort of come back a bit. But we're in a slow growth period. We're trying to expand out of a recession slowly. And it appears to me very, very unlikely that while we're expanding out of a recession that we'd have a fallback of any meaningful number with the condo market. But, there'll be another recession coming in the next 8 to 15 years. And when that one comes, depending on how high prices get and how high, how frothy the economy gets, there could be a setback that could be severe. There may not be. But real estate prices don't go up forever. They go down. They sort of settle out and they start climbing again. And that's been the curve for the last, as long as we've measured real estate prices in Canada, we've seen them go up over the long term. I don't expect that to change. People should buy real estate for a long-term hold, not as a look at my bank account, look how rich I am every day kind of thing.
All right. So if you're looking for a big dip in the next 6 months or, it's just around the corner, it's not just around the corner.
There's no big dip coming for the foreseeable future. When the next recession comes, there may be a big dip.
Brad Lamb, good luck to you. Hey, next time you're in Winnipeg, you want to stop in?
I will, for sure.
Brad Lamb, he's the president and CEO, Lamb Development. He's based in Toronto. He's called the Condo King.
This is Charles Adler.